quick question. If you walked into a store tomorrow and saw milk suddenly priced at $20, would you panic, or would you assume the economy is just doing its thing? Sounds ridiculous, right? But here's the scary part. Millions of people actually misunderstand inflation in ways that can cost them real wealth over time. Today, we're going to clear up one of the biggest pieces of misinformation floating around, the so-called 2% inflation target. You've heard it everywhere: news anchors, politicians, even your financially savvy cousin who won't stop texting you about the federal. But here's the truth: what most people believe about inflation targets is either oversimplified or flat out wrong. And misunderstanding it isn't just trivia, it's the difference between building wealth and watching it slowly erode while you wonder what went wrong. By the way, if your cousin is texting you Fed charts at 2 a.m., maybe consider muting him. Unless he's right about Bitcoin at $100,000, then unblock immediately. Let's strip away the confusion and get to the heart of it. When the Federal Reserve talks about its 2% inflation target, most people hear that and think, oh, that means prices only go up a tiny bit and the economy stays nice and stable. But that's not actually how it works. The 2% number isn't a hard ceiling. It's not a guarantee. It's a long-term average goal. Think of it less like a dart hitting the bullseye and more like trying to keep your balance on a moving boat. Some years inflation runs hotter, maybe 3, 4, even 5%. Other years it cools down. Over time, the Fed just hopes that the ups and downs even out to around 2%. Now, here's the part most people don't realize, and it's where the danger hides. Even when the Fed hits that magical target, your money is still losing value. 2% might sound harmless, almost invisible. But the math doesn't lie. Picture this: you've worked hard, saved up $10,000, and you just let it sit in a savings account while inflation ticks along at 2%. Fast forward 10 years, that same $10,000 can only buy you what about $8,200 buys today. That's nearly 20% of your wealth evaporated, not because you spent it, not because you made bad choices, but simply because of silent inflation. It's like a slow leak in your wallet. You don't notice it day by day. But over time, the damage is undeniable. And this is the part Wall Street rarely spells out clearly: even when the Fed is winning, you're still losing. Because inflation, even at target, is quietly eating away at the value of your money. Here's the emotional trap most people fall into: 2% feels small. It feels safe. It feels almost harmless. The number is so low, so unthreatening, that most of us shrug and think, well, that's nothing to worry about. But that's exactly where the danger lies. Because inflation doesn't just sit still, it compounds. And compounding is a double-edged sword. The same force that helps your investments grow exponentially is the very same force that makes inflation devastating over time. Think about it: 1 year at 2% doesn't sting. But stack that year after year after year, and it snowballs. Suddenly, the comfort zone isn't so comfortable anymore. It's a slow, quiet erosion of your wealth. And this is why the so-called target is dangerous. It gives the illusion that everything is under control. It lulls people into a false sense of security. But behind the curtain, every year that passes is a year you are purchasing power slips further and further away. If you're just parking your money in a savings account, earning next to nothing, you're not standing still, you're sliding backwards. Slowly, invisibly, but relentlessly. It's kind of like running on a treadmill while holding a pizza. Sure, you're moving, you feel active, but here's the problem: your slice is still getting cold. In other words, you might feel like you're safe, but the value of what you're holding is quietly deteriorating. And here's where the story takes a twist most people never see coming. While everyday people hear 2% inflation and imagine calm, steady waters, Wall Street hears something entirely different. To them, 2% isn't comfort, it's opportunity. Because when the Fed signals a long-term environment of moderate inflation, the wealthy know exactly what that means: assets are going to keep climbing. Stocks, real estate, even alternative plays like crypto, they all tend to outpace inflation over time. So while cash slowly melts, assets quietly grow. That's why the wealthy never panic over 2% inflation. In fact, they don't just accept it, they leverage it. They turn inflation into fuel for their portfolios. So here's the real question. Do you want to be the person sitting on a pile of cash that's quietly losing value year after year, or do you want to step onto the playing field the wealthy are already dominating? Do you want to sit on the sidelines while your purchasing power erodes, or do you want to use the same strategies that turn inflation into an advantage? Because here's the truth, and this is where most people miss the mark. There are very specific moves you can make right now to shift from being a victim of inflation to being one of the rare few who actually profits from it. And in the next part of this video, I'll show you exactly how to do it. So how do you fight back? How do you stop being a passive victim of inflation and start taking control? Step 1. Shift how you think about cash. Cash is not your wealth builder, it's your safety net. It's there for emergencies, for stability, for peace of mind, but it should never be the centerpiece of your financial plan. Because cash, by design, will always lose ground against inflation. Step 2. Put the bulk of your money to work in places inflation struggles to destroy. That means investments that grow faster than 2% a year. Historically, that's been things like stocks, rental properties, or even specialized tools like inflation-protected securities. The key isn't just owning assets, it's owning assets that beat the silent erosion of your purchasing power. Step 3. Don't let headlines lull you into complacency. When the Fed says 2% target, don't breathe a sigh of relief. Translate that in your mind as, my cash will buy less every single year unless I move. That mental shift alone separates the wealthy from the average saver. And step 4, think long term. This is where the wealthy truly pull ahead. They don't fear inflation because they've already positioned themselves to ride through it. They don't just react when things get tough, they strategize years in advance. And no, your strategy shouldn't just be hoarding gold bars under your mattress. That's not wealth, that's how you lose friends when they help you move. Wealth isn't about clinging to shiny objects, it's about building systems that grow stronger year after year, even when inflation is trying to chip away at them. Here's the bottom line, inflation isn't a headline, it's a silent thief. But once you understand the truth behind the target, you can stop being its victim and start positioning yourself for real wealth. So ask yourself, do you want to keep watching your money lose power every year, or do you want to take control? If you're ready to learn more ways to build wealth in uncertain times, hit that subscribe button, because the next video is going to show you how to turn these economic headwinds into your advantage. Don't wait for the Fed to save you. Start saving yourself today.